This is a global telephone link prepaid call from.
This message is for Brian. My name's Suzanne, and I'm an attorney. I got your inquiry about the sequel to Willow that you're writing. Can you give me a call back? Okay. Hope you're well. Bye.
That was a voicemail left on my cellular telephone, which is really tantamount to a pocket computer. As I do quarterly, I was consulting my legal team about the pre-production of Willow 2 Through the Portal of Time, the official sequel to the 1988 fantasy film Willow 1 that I am writing, producing, perhaps directing, and, depending on budget, starring in. In recent years, there has been some proverbial pushback from certain rights claimants at the Walt Disney Corporation, who have promulgated various slanders regarding my legal authority to make this film, particularly in light of the Willow sequel webisode series they recently released on Disney.com. In concert with my attorneys, I maintain that the Willow webisode series is not actually a sequel to Willow 1 at all, on account of Willow 1 was a film, and the Willow webisode series is webisodinal. Further, the outright rejection by the public of the Willow webisode series and its almost immediate deletion from the hard drives at Disney.com means that it falls under an obscure clause in United States copyright law called abandonment by disinterest. I will not bore the Sériàlle audience with all the fine details of this clause, but suffice it to say that, according to the law, one cannot claim copyright over something which the public never bothered to watch because it looks/is very bad. What does any of this have to do with McDonald's Pizza and the terrible kidnapping of Whitehorse McDonald's co-franchise owner Joy Karp? Well, just as I am producing Willow 2 Through the Portal of Time, so too did another film producer produce another film, a film called Gone in a Heartbeat, aka Taken Away. And though one would not necessarily know it upon first viewing, it is a dramatization of the most notorious McDonald's pizza-related true crime to ever occur in the remote reaches of northwestern Canada. From the Panoply Network, a wholly owned subsidiary of Pizzaply Media, this is Episode 4 of Sériàlle. I'm Brian Thompson, investigative journalist. Sériàlle is brought to you by MailChimp. There was a time when MailChimp thought nothing of paying top dollar prices on some of the world's worst podcasts. It was not uncommon to find bank records proving MailChimp paid up to $7,000 per 30-second host-read pre-roll on a John from Cincinnati recap podcast that could not book a single cast member as a guest. Yes, even Rebecca De Mornay. This kind of spending put MailChimp into millions of dollars of debt, seriously jeopardizing their bi-weekly rounds of venture capital funding and adversely affecting their customers' experience. But now, with the help of ZipRecruiter, MailChimp has found a much more fiscally responsible CEO who has slashed ad spending and passed those savings on to you. MailChimp. They barely paid anything to sponsor this show. Longtime listeners of Sériàlle will recall 2 episodes ago when I spoke with treasure hunter Christian B. Roper, who originally informed me about the kidnapping of Joy Karp. Soon after our initial contact, Mr. Roper updated me with an update he had discovered on the exclusive research outlet called newspapers.com. An article published in the November 14, 1996 edition of the Whitehorse Daily Star, headlined Karp Kidnap Movie is Set in Colorado, details about a movie based on the Joy Karp kidnapping that is set in Colorado. Originally produced for television broadcast, the film is called Gone in a Heartbeat, also known as Taken Away, and stars 2 stars from the hit drama Los Angeles Law, who portray loosely fictionalized versions of Whitehorse McDonald's franchise co-owners Rick and Joy Karp. According to the article, the real-life Karps were treated, quote, like royalty, unquote, on the set. Mrs. Karp says that after every take, Michael Tucker, the actor who played a character based on her husband Rick Karp, would come over and hug and kiss her. Whether this is royal treatment or simply the deranged and boundary-violating behavior of a method actor is for the dramaturgists to decide. Regardless, the Karps were happy with the final product. But would I be? I found it unlikely that Gone in a Heartbeat would provide any useful information regarding my investigation into McDonald's pizza and related matters, such as whatever happened to it, etc., since the movie changes the McDonald's from the true crime story into a generic restaurant. Whether or not this was for legal reasons, I cannot say. For many years, I have made dozens of dollars from my investigative journalism program, Whatever Happened to Pizza at McDonald's, and have never once been asked by the brand's copyright holders to change the title. But, on the other metaphorical hand, my board game, Whatever Happened to Pizza at McDonald's the board game, was removed from sale by its cowardly publisher for fear that I did not have the right to sell a product with McDonald's in the name. Consequently, the second edition of the game is available under the more legally milquetoastical title, The Board Game Adaptation of an Investigative Journalism Program About Fast Food Pizza, and is currently on sale at thegamecrafter.com for the paltry price of just $68.99. Perhaps the legal team behind this film was made up of similarly faint-hearted and craven quislings as my board game publishers. But whether or not the film might contain any evidentiary treasures, such as a depiction of the in-store menu from a McDonald's in pizza's heyday, I had an obligation as an investigative journalist to do my due diligence and watch it. My hopes as to its quality were raised quite a bit when I discovered it is available only on the premium streaming services Tubi and Freevee. So much so that I decided to recruit the expert opinion of one of America's premier film critics, Mr. Jordan Hoffman, vice chair of the New York Film Critics Circle, whose expert film analysis has appeared in such fine publications as Vanity Fair, The Guardian, and StarTrek.com. He joins me now. Jordan, first, could you please establish your bona fides for my audience? Amongst the great American film critics, of course, there's Pauline Kael, there is Roger Ebert, there's Armand White, of course, Jeffrey Wells. Where do you think that you fit in that pantheon?
I would say as far from Jeffrey Wells as possible. Where do I fit in the pantheon? You know, that's not for me to say. That's for my readers, my public to determine. But I like to think that I'm one of the best.
I like to think that as well. I very greatly enjoy thinking that. I've read many of your reviews over the years, and most of them I do agree with. And the ones that I don't, I will just keep to myself.
Sure.
But
yeah.
I wanted to speak with you because you have seen the film Gone in a Heartbeat, a.k.a. Taken Away. Now,
Yeah.
I keep seeing that this movie is known by both titles, but if you look it up on the streaming services, Tubi.com, Freevee.com, YouTube.com, it's always listed as Gone in a Heartbeat.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, where was this released as Taken Away? And I have determined that it was for the DVD release.
Digital video disc.
Digital versatile disc. Because
Sorry.
they can't do more things than just show video.
Right. Yeah.
Apology accepted. What are your first impressions of this film?
Well, you know, first of all, I just want to take a pause for a quick moment. I don't know when you're planning to release this particular interview on your journalism show, but I understand that your show highlights, McDonald's, right? Like that's a key
Correct.
element. I'm a little bit confused about, you talk about pizza. It's a little bit perplexing, but McDonald's, right? And so I don't know when you're going to release this, but we have to acknowledge the time that we're speaking right now, because I'm in a bit of a tailspin, and I think you might be too. Today is May 30th, 2024. This is a historic day for people in the McDonald's community, because one of the most fervent appreciators of McDonald's has just been handed 34 guilty verdicts in court.
I believe you're speaking of former President Mr. Donald Trump.
Yeah. Now, the guy is a controversial man, and I don't want to get political, but when it comes to McDonald's, I think his policies are very clear. He's very pro-McDonald's.
Well, I have in the past tried to contact Mr. Trump, specifically when he was president of the United States. I figured if anyone in a position of power would sympathize with my cause, it would be him. But I was not able to get anywhere. In fact, I tried to meet with him at the White House, and I was physically accosted and emotionally intimidated by Secret Service agents who insisted that I leave. And they wouldn't even tell me where he was, so that I could try to find him there and ask for an interview. So I'm not actually 100% sure where he falls on the McDonald's pizza issue, but you're definitely correct. It will definitely affect McDonald's bottom line once he does receive. And I do understand this is the case. He will be receiving the electric chair.
Yeah, I mean, well, depends on what you get, where you get your news from, obviously. Now, of course, there are conspiracies about Donald Trump's relationship with McDonald's. I mean, I know QAnon is something that's a very top concern among many. And the issue is Mr. Trump has cited as his favorite meal at McDonald's, the Fish Delight, which is something that maybe it's only on the executive menu, but you're familiar with his statements about the Fish Delight, right?
Yes, the Fish Delight. Many people think that he is mistakenly referring to what is called the Filet-O-Fish, mistaking it for a Fish Delight. Others think that perhaps he does have access, like you said, to some sort of a secret menu for the world's elites. Perhaps it is a Filet-O-Fish with some adrenochrome mixed into the tartar sauce. I have not been able to go undercover as a rich man and find out for myself, but I do plan to in the future. I'm working on an undercover persona to that effect, a gentleman who wears a top hat and a monocle, etc.
Well, I just thought it was important that we acknowledge the day, right, for your community in an apolitical stance.
Certainly.
It's an important day for American history. Second pretty much only to the lifetime airing of whatever the hell this movie is called. She fell.
Gone.
She's gone. Gone in a heartbeat. Yeah,
which is a double entendre, because on one hand she has been kidnapped. It happened quite suddenly. Yeah. One might say, in a metaphorical heartbeat.
Sure.
And then also she is suffering from a debilitating heart condition, which adds a sort of ticking clock, you might say, to the proceedings. Her heart might tick out.
Yeah, she's suffering from heart disease, and her doctor doesn't want to treat her for it. It's a little strange. It's an unusual medical procedure she's got. The procedure is just wait until you get older, and then maybe you'll have surgery. But maybe we should back it up a little bit and tell the listeners a little bit about the film, because it's possible that when this was released in 1996, they were doing other things.
Well, I can say that this film is based on the true crime of the kidnapping of Joy Karp of Whitehorse, Yukon Territory, Canada. As longtime listeners who have been listening to the past couple of episodes of this program know, Rick and Joy Karp were a very much in love couple of high school sweethearts who moved to Whitehorse to open a McDonald's franchise. Joy had previously been quite a high-level executive in the McDonald's Corporation in Canada. They opened the first McDonald's in Whitehorse, the most remote McDonald's in Canada. Shortly after they started serving McDonald's pizza, some say suspiciously shortly after they started serving McDonald's pizza, Joy Carp was kidnapped by the local high school valedictorian. Again, to my listeners, I apologize for bringing this up over and over and over again, but it does bear further examination. She and her husband Rick claim that she was buried alive. Now, having seen the film, from what I understand, the way it's depicted is quite accurate. She was, in fact, held captive inside a car, and the car was covered with tree branches. Now, Mr.
And
Hoffman,
snow.
Eventually snow.
Yeah.
Eventually
You can't really blame the kidnappers for that, though.
Well, my question to you is,
yes,
and other
yes.
people have weighed in on this issue. I will not reveal what they say to bias your opinion, but would you consider that being buried alive?
I would consider that being covered alive.
Interesting.
She was covered alive by tree branches, and she had to go to the bathroom, and she couldn't. She was handcuffed, and she was blindfolded at first, but got out of her blindfolds. And then when she eventually did make it out of the car, there was hardly anywhere to go, so she just went back in the car.
Yes, so I found the bathroom situation was particularly harrowing, and it made me think. Listeners, when I remember last week's episode, I mentioned that in order to prevent myself from wasting valuable investigatory time going to the restroom, I have fashioned a simple harness out of rubber bands and store-brand zip-top bags.
For using for liquid waste.
For liquid and other waste. But it made me think, I wish I could go back in time and provide this apparatus to Joy Carp, or as she is called in the film, what is her character's name? Jan Hale.
Jan Hale. Well, there are some changes made in the film. For example, like you say, Joy Carp is now Jan Hale, and the woman portraying her is an actress named Jill Boysenberry, who is an established Hollywood actress. Jill Boysenberry has delighted on the stage and the screen, and playing her husband Mark Hale is Michael Tucker, who is what we in the film criticism game refer to as that guy. Now, he's not the only that guy. There are many that guys, or I guess maybe it's that's guy. There's many of them, but, several different performers can sort of, enter the essence of that guy during a performance and then kind of slip out of it, for the next person to go in.
Absolutely. I'm just taking a glance at his filmography right now. It's quite extensive and varied. Everything from a movie called Cold Souls to a movie called Mickey's 60th birthday to Radio Days, D2: The Mighty Ducks. He's had quite a career. Apparently, at the time of this film's release, he and Jill Boysenberry were known from the television program Los Angeles Law. Yeah. But they were also, and still are, I assume, a happily married couple in real life.
Yeah. Now, it's interesting because, Los Angeles, which is where Los Angeles Law is set, is typically very warm. Correct. And this, film, in real life, it was, as you say, in the Yukon territories. But in the movie, they changed it to Colorado. But Colorado has something similar to the Yukon, which is the lack of warmth. And there is a lot of snow and ice, which is a story point. In fact, one of the first lines of the film, as they're waving, their son and daughter are driving off to college, they say, "Watch out for the ice." I think that this was before he shot D2: The Mighty Ducks, but I think that sort of familiarity with ice really lent some verisimilitude to his later work. You also mentioned Cold Souls, which I haven't seen, but if I'm remembering correctly from the trailer, there was a sequence in which he had no shoes, and he was also walking on the ice. Maybe it was a little hat tip to D2, the Mighty Ducks. And if you do walk on ice without shoes, you will have cold soles. Now, when they were shipping the pizza up to the McDonald's in the Yukon Territory, they probably had to freeze it, right?
What I understand is that the McDonald's pizza's crust was shipped frozen to various McDonald's, but all of the other toppings, accoutrements that make up a pizza were applied fresh. That's what I understand.
Yeah, even the mushrooms.
Even the mushrooms, and even as I've recently learned, the pineapple and ham. Did you realize that pineapple and ham on a pizza was invented by Canadians?
Wow. Canada has given us a lot of great films, and I know they make a lot of movies there, even if they appear to be normal American movies, they're actually shot in Canada. They kind of keep that on the down low, as they say. Like, for example, you could be watching a movie thinking they're regular people in there, but they're actually Canadians pretending, acting. They're Canadian actors pretending just to be regular.
It's sort of like that film Invasion of the Body Grabbers.
Yeah, totally like that. And
this is actually one of those films. This film was, the location of the film within the film is like you said, in Colorado, whereas the real events happened in Canada. But the film itself was shot in Canada.
You're telling me that the real life event was happened in Canada. The story is in Colorado, America, but they actually produced the movie back in Canada. So yes. It's like a sandwich of reality there.
From my research, there are 3 major differences between the film and the happenings of actual reality. Number 1, of course, is the change of the character names. Number 2 is the change of the location. I should say 4 differences. Number 3 would be the change of McDonald's to some... How would you describe the restaurant in this?
Clean. It seemed clean, and I think that the prices were reasonable, but you got it wasn't like a cheap night out, because they established that the family was very well to do, hence the kidnapping. They needed $100,000. Of course, now we know that's Canadian dollars, so that's like more like 15,000 real dollars. But they needed $100,000 to ransom Jill Boysenberry, and he was able to get that because the restaurant made a lot of money. There's even a moment at the beginning, brilliantly foreshadowed, Chekhovian almost, where he says, "I've got to make a bank run," and he says, "Could you imagine in a big city," implying that crime only happens in big cities, "that I would take this much cash just and stroll down the street to the bank?" And he says it's a very poignant moment. And then Jill Boysenberry says, "That's why we left the big city, to be here in this little town where there's no problems." But it was not a McDonald's for sure. It was a mom and pop restaurant where they definitely serve meat, because there's a conversation about the butcher who. Remember that scene where they're on the telephone and the chef is complaining about how the butcher said he wouldn't have enough ground chuck or something of that nature. So they sold meat.
They sell meat. I believe they sell pastas of some sort. The decor looks sort of like a cross between an Irish pub and a Shakey's Pizza.
Yeah.
And there are pinball machines.
Listen, I got the impression that if you go there, I'm not going to say everybody knows your name, but maybe you're eating good in the neighborhood type of thing. I mean, it seemed like a friendly type of establishment.
Clean, but casual.
Yeah. And fiscally, a whirlwind,
Well, according to the film, the reason that they do know that the Tuckers and the Boysenberrys, or as they're called in the film, the Hales, are wealthy enough to pay a handsome ransom is because the kidnapper frequents this establishment, he says, to play the games. And there are so many people there to play the games so often that he knows that they're proverbially rolling in cash. I believe that maybe this is a transposition of serving McDonald's pizza, meaning that in real life, the kidnapper frequented this McDonald's and saw that everyone there was enjoying the pizza so often that the real life carp couple must have had enough money to pay a ransom.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, that's maybe, look, I mean, you're still doing the work to find out what happened up there, but there is a suggestion that McDonald's, I'm just, again, you're the expert, but the suggestion is that McDonald's knew that if they maintained pizza on the menu, there would be such an influx of cash that ne'er-do-well people would just be unable to stop. There'd be kidnappings all across North America because there'd be so many opportunities to take money because there'd be so much money coming in.
This is a fascinating angle and one I have not considered before. Previously, when considering this true crime, the prevailing thought was that someone, maybe the McDonald's Corporation, maybe even more powerful forces behind the McDonald's Corporation, orchestrated this kidnapping in order to intimidate the Carps into stopping their pizza service.
Oh.
But your theory, actually, I find more compelling than that.
Well, I mean, you gotta follow the money, as they say, right? So
pizza's outrageous success may have opened up franchise owners to kidnappings, any sort of crime where the criminal could extort money, and therefore open perhaps McDonald's to some liability.
Right. They can say, look, we've had this store for 16 years with very few problems. I mean, there was the one incident when we ran out of the dipping sauce for the McNuggets, but other than that, everything was fine. Then the pizza dough rolls in and it's just, constant mayhem because there's just too many opportunities for crime. It's just a theory. And, I don't have the proof to back it up, but it's just a theory, and it's a thought that I had while I was watching the film. Neglected to say, by the way, James Marsden plays the architect of the crime, and he's the valedictorian of the high school, and you see him in science class doing well. So he at first seems very, very smart. But then when you see how quickly his plot just disintegrates and how quickly their scheme falls apart, it leads me to conclude that everybody else in that high school was a complete moron. Because if he's one of the top students, God only knows, because he actually is something of an idiot. And his sidekick is also a complete dunce. These are what you would call mentally challenged people by any normal standards, because they simply don't know what the hell they're doing. And I don't know to what extent that was taken directly from life. But James Marsden, who, by the way, I'm sure is actually quite intelligent in real life, but the character he's playing is stupid.
Well, I do not know how their intelligence might compare to, say, someone in the larger Canadian population, or specifically another citizen of Whitehorse. I'm sure there's maybe a chapter or a footnote about this in the book, The Bell Curve. But I do know that the real-life criminals, one, who was in the film portrayed by James Marsden, was seen by the courts as the ringleader, and his sidekick, portrayed in the film by Shane Thomas Meyer, or as he's credited in the film, just Shane Meyer, was seen as sort of a subservient, a toady, a hanger-on, a follower, a henchman. And he was given a much lighter sentence than James Marsden's real-life counterpart.
Yeah.
So between the two of them, one was seen as considerably less crafty, let's say, than the other.
Yeah. I was also taken with the performances, with the characterization of the police force. Tell me if you agree. I mean, I noticed that the way they presented the the chief, he wasn't the chief of the town's police. He was the chief from out of town because Whitehorse was very small. They had to bring in, more. Well, it's not Whitehorse in the film, but it's a small town in Colorado. They have to bring in someone from a bigger city, and the local police officer is edging to go to help find the kidnappers. In fact, because he's friends with the woman played by Jill Boysenberry, and the chief is holding him back. It's almost as if he spends his time behind a desk, and it's the cop on the street who gets results. I found this to be a fascinating dynamic, a very original and poignant dramatization of what could potentially be quite accurate on police forces.
I think you're right, and I think that the actor who portrayed the police chief, the actor named Robert Wisden, I'm seeing, who, by the way, seems to have also played former President Richard Nixon in the film Watchmen, which I believe is a superhero film for middle school boys who have reached sexual maturity.
Yeah.
Anyway, he was very good in the role, and I think so good and conveyed such a sense of competence that, in my estimation, and you could tell me if you agree or disagree, he sort of diminished the screen presence of the husband in the film, and to such degree that I sort of expected when Jill Boysenberry, spoiler alarm, burst forth from her pile of snow and twigs, that she would run into Robert Wisden, a.k.a. Police Chief Ben Alpert's warm embrace.
Yeah, I mean, he certainly is the more virile of the two, but you got to remember, of course, that she's married to the other guy, so that would be an awkward, for the whole crew and everybody. It's tough. She, at that point also, and she hadn't had her heart medicine in a while. So if she were to embrace this chief of police, handsome guy, especially from another town, it might just flood her with pheromones and excitement and just, knock her dead right at the end of the film where she survived the whole ordeal. So
that is quite an interesting point. Yes, being married to Michael Tucker would certainly keep your heart in check.
Yeah. There's not a lot of, look, I don't know if they have children or anything, but, even though they're older, artificial insemination, that's been around for a while now. It could have been the way. It's really not. It's not germane to the quality of the film.
Speaking about the movie's quality, your speciality when it comes to film is ranking films, giving films. What is your preferred rating? Rank? What do you call it?
I do like stars.
Out of how many?
17. I like to give them out of 17.
So I'm looking at the IMDb rating, which is on a 10-star scale, and that is 5.1 out of 10 stars.
Yeah. So for mine, that would be a little bit higher. But I understand. It's like when you go to another country and you have to convert the money in your head. You don't always get it exactly right. So you say it was about a 5.3 is what they gave it on IMDb?
Around exactly 5.1.
5.1 around, yeah. Okay, yeah, I can understand that. 5.1 is more than half, which I think is a little low. I think this movie is better than that.
Well, it's interesting because when you click through on IMDb to the user reviews, those are, the written reviews anyway, are quite a bit higher than that. 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10, 8 out of 10, 8 out of 10. In fact, one of the reviews has a headline that says much better than a 5 out of 10 or 6 out of 10 story. But it does say warning spoilies. So
Yeah. Well, listen, we've talked a lot about conspiracies during this conversation, and it sounds to me like something else is being covered up. It's almost as if darker, powerful, malevolent forces are tamping down the true quality of this film in an effort to keep people from doing the inquiry that you're making. trying to find out why was this woman taken in a heartbeat, and how does it relate to the true story, and what are the implications of that action.
Do you think that this film might be ripe for a remake? Perhaps one that is closer to the real life events? Maybe even an unauthorized depiction of a McDonald's in the heyday of McDonald's pizza?
I mean, there are some underground movements in cinema that take a more maverick approach. Just shoot it and, worry about the legalities later. McDonald's is notoriously tough. I mean, there are some examples of them slipping through. I mean, the most famous, of course, is Coming to America, right? So, maybe there'll be pizza at a McDowell's in Canada.
Well, they did shut down the first edition of my board game, Whatever Happened to Pizza at McDonald's, the board game. I've never heard of them going after any other productions. I think, though, that if a remake is made, it would be very important for the lead roles to be played by, if not a married couple, at least a couple who are in some sort of a committed relationship, or even perhaps two people who are part of a larger polycule. Do you know of any modern actors that fit that description?
They're not married yet, but Tom Holland and Zendaya would be perfect in this film. I mean, he's just a little cherry tomato. I just love him to death. And she's just alluring and vivacious and filled with a vigor that just, leaves me breathless. And I think if she were covered alive in a car with branches and also snow, and Tom Holland had to go and rescue her, audiences would just be at the edge of their seat.
They would also carry on the tradition of the actors portraying these characters having a noticeable height difference.
I suppose that's true. True. She's taller than he is, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And Jill Boysenberry is quite a bit taller than Michael Tucker.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know a few people in Hollywood. I can always send a direct message via Twitter to a few executives and put a bug in their ear. They don't always listen to me, but I think this is a good one.
Well, I encourage you to do so. I would caution you, however, to recognize my part in the creation of this idea. And
no, I mean, you just said, who do you think would be good? And I came up with the idea.
Well, I know that some people have received some very high-level credits for much, much less.
What could be less than you asking me? I mean, it was like you were hardly even involved.
Well, we'll just see who writes it down first and puts it in an envelope, puts a stamp on it, and mails it to themselves.
Yeah. All right.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Hoffman, for joining me. This has been very enlightening. And
are you going to get that? Are you going to get that notarized?
It depends on who's available at my local FedEx office, aka Kinko's.
So, because let's say, for example, I would use a fax. I think that's even faster than FedEx. So,
Well, I wish you good luck in your endeavors, and I wish you good luck in any legal endeavors that you might encounter in the future.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, hey, we're just two old gals talking about this. I think it's, I'm not too concerned, is what I'm saying. I think it's a pretty good idea, but I also think that knowing the state of Hollywood right now and their obsession with recycling IP, there probably is a Gone in a Heartbeat project in development at several of the streamers and maybe one or two of the major Hollywood studios by now. So who's to say?
Well, I do plan to pitch it as a 15-minute long vertically oriented webisode.
Well, when you put it like that, who could say no?
Next time on Sériàlle, the trail of McDonald's pizza leads from the remotest reaches of Canada to one of the country's most populous cities. It is a story of hopes dashed, a story of sunken treasure, and a story of a legendary creature who stalks the night.
Dracula's only one of the names he's gone by. The Babylonians worshipped him as Dagon, and now they call him Drake.
Do you know what happened to pizza at McDonald's? Do you remember it? Please send all correspondence to pizza@mcdonalds@gmail.com. To support the show, please join my Patreon at patreon.com/pizza@mcd's for exclusive benefits. And for more information, including links to social media, merchandise opportunities, etc., visit pizza@mcdonalds.com. Thank you to my invaluable Patreon producers: Solomon Goudsward, Bipolar Biped, Grant Bacon, Jacob Ford, Joe Kajik, Kimberly King, Andy McH, Kyle Turok, Pam Gabriel, Polly Egan, Thomas Young, Will, Adam Crump, Andrew Duffy, Andrew Ahmed Rubin, Billy Jean, Brad Allen Thompson, Creighton Barrow, Dan Dreyer, Jeffrey Francis Sylvia, Jay Poop, Calvin Thomas, Laurel Paul, Opus Moreski, Paul Fu, and Ryan Guggenmoss. I'm Brian Thompson, investigative journalist.